Welcome to Grounded Spirits Podcast, a place where we're learning how to stay rooted while flying high. I'm your host, Laura Lynn, and we are going over tablet number 10 of the 15 Emerald Tablets. This one is called the Key of Time, so if you want to know more about what the Key of Time means, stay tuned. Okay, so we are getting started on page 60. If you don't know, if you want this PDF, just DM me on Instagram at Grounded Spirits, say PDF, and send me your email address, or just email me straight to groundedspirits@gmail.com and say like Emerald Tablets or something, and I will send this to you for free. So, like I said, we are on page 60, tablet number 10, the Key of Time. List ye, O man, take of my wisdom, learn of his deep hidden mysteries of space, learn of the thought that grew in the abyss, bringing order and harmony in space. So if you've been following this series, this is pretty standard. We have been learning about the wisdom and about the order and harmony, the law, all of these kinds of things throughout all of the tablets. So nothing really new here. So now we're going to go on to the next stanza. It says, "Know ye, O man, that all exists has being only because of the law." So I think what it's trying to say is like all of existence, or like everything that is created, anything that you can think of has its being because of the law. So there's nothing outside of your imagination that is not real, because if it wasn't real somewhere in some dimension, in some capacity, you wouldn't have the ability to think about it. You wouldn't have the ability to create it in your mind. So that's what he's saying there. Then he says, "Know ye the law, and ye shall be free. Never be bound by the fetters of night." And so again, we've been talking about this for the last few tablets, about this how do I put this, like this battle between darkness and light, and how we always need to be going towards the light, and that the darkness could be our bodies, it could be like actual darkness, it could be the night, it could be stuff like that, but that this darkness, or like even like the darkness of not having the awareness that we are spiritual beings, all of these different things keep us bound and keep us constrained, keep us in cages. And the whole idea of life is to learn how to free our souls so that our souls can develop further. Everything's just about growth. That's the whole point of life, is just to grow. So that's what is going on there. And then it says, "Far through strange spaces have I journeyed, into the depths of the abyss of time, until in the end all was revealed. Know ye that mystery is only mystery, when it is knowledge unknown to man. When ye have plumbed the heart of all mystery, knowledge and wisdom will surely be thine." So we've talked about this before, that in my Carlos Castaneda books, Don Juan says the same thing, like, how could you possibly think that there aren't more mysteries on earth? Like, as human beings, we only know a tiny little bit of all that there is. So how could you think that there are no mysteries left on earth for us to discover or to uncover? And this is really great, because when I was young, in like middle school, when I was a middle schooler, I was reading about all of these great philosophers and great thinkers and authors and scientists and all these other kind of things. I'm thinking specifically, every week my teacher printed out these pink sheets with like somebody's face on them, and then like a little bio about what they did. And I just remember thinking, like, man, I was born the wrong time. I wish I was born during the Renaissance or during the Enlightenment period, so that I could have discovered something. And now I'm laughing about it, because like there's so much more to discover. How could I possibly think that as a 12-year-old that everything was already discovered in the whole entire world, right? So now I'm working on the Ornellian inner map, so that just like how we have a map to like a Google Maps, or even like before that with MapQuest, you know, of being able to know where you're going to go. Now we need to do that for our inner world, because it is just as important, if not more important, than the outer world. Then it says, "Seek ye and learn that time is the secret, whereby ye may be free of this space." And time is fully capitalized. So I've talked about her a couple of times, and I haven't yet grown the balls to message her on Instagram to have her on the show. I'm sure she would say yes. She's answered my messages before. I just have to do it. But Emma Lokai, her handle is It's Emma Lokai, and she always talks about that time doesn't exist, that your manifestations don't need time, that it's all about your self-concept work, and the second that you are able to give it to yourself with your self-concept, like once you know who you are, then all your manifestations will come true. You just have to like reach that same vibration of that manifestation that you're trying to achieve. But it's really difficult, and I feel like that's where it takes time. But I do agree with her that once you reach that vibration, then of course it's going to match up. The law of attraction doesn't lie, right? But yeah, she's a big proponent saying that time doesn't exist. And so it's kind of like what Thoth is telling us here. Oh, by the way, if you're new here, our author is Thoth the Atlantean. And so we're just taking everything that he's saying at face value and just kind of going from there. So I'm going to read this part again. It said, "Seek ye and learn that time is the secret, whereby ye may be free of this space." So once we're able to uncover this, then that's where the secret lies, is that time doesn't exist. That time is just a 3D thing that we use to be able to categorize. Because that's what we do really, really well with, is categorizing instead of connecting with. So the next stanza starts off with, "Long have I, wisdom, sought wisdom, I, and shall seek of eternity's end, for know that ever before me receding shall move the goal I seek to attain. Even the lords of the cycles know that not yet have they reached the goal, for with all of their wisdom, they know that truth ever grows." And so what it's saying here is that you're never going to know everything. Like even Thoth at this point still does not know everything. And that's just so wild to me, because it's like exciting because there's so much to know out there, but then it's also daunting because you're never going to reach your goal. And I think that that's kind of how people feel like on this spiritual journey, that there's always going to be something to heal. There's always going to be another part of you that you're trying to work on to be better. But I think that that's also that's the point of life, right? Like I said earlier, it's the point of life is to grow, and that's how we grow, by learning these lessons and growing as people. So in this stanza, wisdom, the first wisdom. So that was interesting too, because he says, "Long have I, wisdom, sought wisdom." So is he saying that like now he can call himself wisdom and that's why it's fully capitalized? Or is he saying like now, like usually when it's capitalized like that, it means that it's part of the collective instead of the individual. So maybe it has to do with that like I as wisdom, like wisdom itself is also seeking to attain more wisdom. And then it also makes me think about how everything is knowledge. And the way that it's so cool that the way that we can create then becomes knowledge. Like when I write a book, it is now part of that knowledge. It's adding to the canon of what we consider knowledge. And that's what my company Bel Esprit is seeking to how do I say it, to bridge, like, I'm gonna say like fake knowledge with academic knowledge, but it's not fake, you know, like Taylor Swift's lyrics that I went over here on Grounded Spirits, that's not fake knowledge. And I would say that it is scholarly work, and so I'm writing a book about it. Well, not just about that, but I'm using her examples to bolster my arguments. And so if you're interested, the book is called Freedom, Love, and Knowledge. It is now on pre-order on Amazon. And I'm really excited for that book to come out. I'm bringing in astrology. I'm bringing in Gabrielle Souchon, who was a 17th century philosopher who no one really knows about because she was a woman. And that's what her whole treatise is about how, why aren't women taken more seriously? Why aren't women given the respect that they deserve? So, yeah. Okay. So like I said, wisdom was fully capitalized. Lords and cycles are fully capitalized. They, and so was truth. So like it says, they know that truth will ever grow. So he's saying like even the lords, even the people that are like way up high above me, they still don't know everything. They're still learning. And I think that's what's so wild about the education system, especially here in America, that teachers think that they know it all. Teachers aren't growing. Teachers aren't learning new things. They're just regurgitating, and that's what they're asking their students to do. And I think that's ridiculous. How this is gonna sound, I'm gonna just say it, right? We're practicing on just speaking our truth. This is like for everybody, right? Not just for me, but I think that's part of what being a grounded spirit is about knowing who you are and not being afraid to say it, so that you can have that feeling of flying high while staying rooted. And again, staying rooted is about knowing who you are and having that conviction and that confidence. And so, like I said, I'm going to say it. So, like, for teachers, like, how dare you call yourself a teacher if you're not growing and learning yourself? The best teachers are the ones who are still students. So how dare you want students to learn and have that be your profession if you're not doing it yourself? Because then that's being a hypocrite, right? So that's where my stance is on there. And so that's like what I'm really trying to change, and like working on like a teacher curriculum so that teachers are growing and learning and diving deeper into their subjects and learning more about other subjects so that they too can become polymaths. If you want to learn more about polymaths and about this whole journey, or if you're a teacher who's interested in joining this new school that I'm creating, go to Ela Institute on Instagram. There I am doing like a trial run. You could go to Ela Institute. I explain everything there. But right now we are in June, and so the three subjects for June are global studies, education, and language arts, which is just like communication, really. Like, how do we communicate as people in different cultures? And so what I'm doing is every single day I am looking at a new country and exploring it, understanding it better, knowing like what their education system is like, what can we learn and bring it into ours, and it's been really fun. So yeah, so you can go there. Ela is spelled I-L-A, and then I also have a podcast where I talk about how I bring in all of these polymathic tendencies, or like, how do I say it, like all the different, so being a polymath just means learning about every single subject. And so what I did is I separated into 3 subjects per month, and on Ela Radio, my other podcast, I am looking at just those 3 subjects and saying like, how do I integrate these 3 subjects in my life without buying a course, without even buying books, like literally just through Instagram and through seeing the world in this new lens. I'm saying like how it can all come together. And so I've been doing it since April. So there's a couple of episodes on there if you want to go check them out. But that one is only on Spotify, whereas this one, Grounded Spirits, is everywhere. Ela Radio is only on Spotify. So let's continue on. It says, once in a past time I spoke to the dweller, asked of the mystery of time and space, asked him the question that surged in my being, saying, O Master, what is time? Then to me spoke he, the Master, know ye, O Thoth, in the beginning there and void and nothingness, a timeless, spaceless nothingness, and into the nothingness came a thought, purposeful, all-pervading, and it filled the void. There existed no matter, only force, a movement, a vortex, a vibration, and the purposeful thought that filled the void. That is so cool. So we're getting the same story. So this was written before the Bible, you guys. Like, these emerald tablets were like before the pyramids were built. And so the fact that he's saying the same thing that we see in the Bible, and I don't know of every single other culture, but I do know that various other cultures have a similar beginning where there is just nothing. And then as I was reading, the image that popped into my head was what I was saying at the very beginning of this episode with what the darkness is. And I said that it had to do with awareness, that you could be in the dark when you're not aware that you're a spiritual being, when you think that the 3D is all there is. And then the second that you unlock that and accept the reality that you are a spiritual being and that you do have a soul and a mind and a body and a spirit, then your whole world changes. You see the world in a new light, and you can never go back to seeing the world as a place where you just have to sacrifice and be caged. Like, once you experience that freedom, there's no way to go back. And the way that Thoth is describing it here is that same thing, that God was just part of everybody else. That's what the Holy Spirit is, right? The Holy Spirit is an all-encompassing everything. So you could even call it like Mother Nature, Holy Spirit, same being. And so God, the reason why he's male is because he was male because I'm thinking like Sagittarius. I'm thinking like Saturn, like Capricorn, like being able to like split off from the rest and to be able to have that structure. That's the male energy. And so even if this was happening inside of a woman's mind, the energy is still male, because the male divine energy is what gives us structure and what is able to separate us from everybody else. It's what gives us our ego. And so the way that he's saying it here, how did he say it? And into the nothingness came a thought, purposeful, all-pervading, and it filled the void. So it could just be a thought like, like I wonder if this could be a thing. And I remember specifically when this happened to me, when like my whole world changed. I was on a hike, and I was on a hike with my husband's family, and I just remember looking at this leaf, and that's when my theory of reality came to me. This is before I got into like the spiritual stuff. This is way before. So Grounded Spirits was born September of 2020, and this happened in May of 2020. So like completely different. But it was like this, my reality theory is just that, kind of what Thoth was saying earlier, that everything exists, that nothing that you can possibly think of is fake. Everything exists. And then I watched the movie Onward, and so I was like, people who were these mythical creatures, they just forgot who they were. And then just over time and evolution and reproduction, we're all just human. But we could have these past, these how do I say, not DNA, like these, our ancestors may have been mythical creatures, but we wouldn't know about it. And it sounded so crazy, and even now saying it out loud makes me feel crazy. But even in my book with Monterey, Reina she falls into this paint dimension, and she meets a being named Ingrid. No, sorry, it's Indigo. And it's a they. So they say, like, they say the same thing, like, everything has to come from somewhere. And what's so crazy is that this being, it was like an actual being, but when I was writing, I was channeling. So I don't know if I was channeling this being, or like the whole time I was just in communication with the Holy Spirit when I was writing this book. And I was just channeling whatever the Holy Spirit was telling me. So I'm not necessarily sure if Indigo or Ingrid, I forgot what I named I forgot what I named them, but they said, like, everything has to come from somewhere. So basically, like, affirming my reality theory. So my whole point is, what if this reality theory, once you accept that, or once you're able to believe it, or once it pops into your head organically, that's the God self inside that is now, like, that's what happened in, like, when God did it, and then God created us. Like, God just made us up, and then we were. God was able to think it, like, then there was light. He said that, like, let there be light, and then there was light. Like, what if that's how it works? We're all just in God's imagination. But, like, we're real in our thing, but we're just God's imagination, so why can't we do the same in our heads? And create this whole universe inside of our heads? And I think that we kind of do. In my book, Monterey, which you can also find on Amazon, I discover, well, it's the Holy Spirit of who's inside of me. And so in the book, her name is Holy Ray. And so she is telling me that she was basically explaining, like, what the Holy Spirit does, and how she's trying to get all of the different organisms that live inside of my body to come together and to be one so that I can be healed. And so it's kind of the same thing. It's like it's a parallel to how God works, that we are all just the body of God, and we need to come together so that God can be healed. So the more that we love ourselves, the more that God loves himself. Because in so many, especially like in early modern philosophies or theodicies, they all talk about, like, God being perfect. Even in the Bible, everywhere, that God is perfect and all of this. But then how does God grow? If I'm over here talking about how dare teachers be teachers, if they're not growing, then God needs to be growing too. So then it's like in a whole thing of, like, are there multiple states of perfection? And I would say yes, because there are multiple states of infinity. There are larger infinities and smaller infinities. So why aren't there larger and smaller perfections that are God? And so God is growing, I would say. And he is growing because we're growing. And the more that we love ourselves, the more that God loves himself. And it kind of just goes on and on like that. Alright, I have talked way too much about this one, but it just completely blew my mind that we're seeing all these parallels from different points. And I think that's how you know that something's real. If so many different people are saying, not like in a bandwagon kind of scenario where everybody jumps on the bandwagon when somebody of their community says something. When it's being said in multiple communities, across culture, across time, across gender, across multiple different facets like that, then that's how I think you know that something is real. Okay. Now we are on page 61, and it says, "And I questioned the master, saying, was this thought eternal? And answered me the dweller, saying, in the beginning there was eternal thought. And for thought to be eternal, time must exist. So into the all-pervading thought grew the law of time. Time which exists through all space, floating in a smooth rhythmic movement that is eternally in a state of fixation. Time changes not, but all things change in time. For time is the force that holds events separate, each in its own proper place. Time is not in motion, but ye move through time, as your consciousness moves from one event to another." Oh my gosh, this is so interesting. So yeah, I feel like this is getting like super trippy, but what's going through my mind right now is like Jeremy Bearimy from The Good Place, where they talk about time as being in this like weird loop thing. But what Thoth is saying here is that time doesn't necessarily exist. It's kind of what I was saying earlier. Time is just a way for us to categorize our consciousness moving from one event to another. So, for instance, right now I've been talking for 27 minutes. So, every word that I say has its place in time. And then by being able to go back and listen to it, I'm now creating a new time because now I'm the listener instead of the speaker. So, I think that's like what he's saying, like, time doesn't necessarily exist. It's just the way that we can understand our consciousness moving from one point to another, because if there wasn't time, then everything would just blob up. So that's how I'm understanding this. And then where it says that time, same thing. Okay. I just wanted to point out that dweller, law, and time are fully capitalized. So when he was asking, like, is the thought eternal? And so it has to be, because if God stopped thinking about us, then we would cease to exist. Okay. Interesting. So before I move on, because I'm thinking, like, how can God know every single one of us? And it could be with the whole perfection thing, omniscient kind of God. But going back to Monterey, the way that the Holy Ray explained it in Monterey was that it has to do with community. So that's why we are so ingrained in our community, and every single thing has to have a community. Even trash has a community. We put it all in the same bag and say, you guys are all trash. You guys are all this one thing. So everything has a community for us to be able to exist, because if we left everything and nobody knew about us, it's the whole thing of, if a tree falls in a forest, does it make a sound? And Emma would say no. She's actually talked about this on her Instagram before. But I would say yes, because the trees would hear it. The animals would hear it. Just because a human isn't there doesn't necessarily mean that there's nothing there. It still has its community. But if a tree was, let's say, if a tree was fully isolated where nothing could hear it fall, would it still make a sound? And I don't know, but I'm thinking about it back to The Good Place when Karen, she puts everybody, or I don't know if they come into it, I don't know how it started, I forgot how it worked, but they're in this like white room. And let's say that I was alone in this white room and nobody had any interaction with me, nobody knew I was there, I was just by myself in this white room, and I was speaking, my ears would still hear me. So I would be making a sound. But if I didn't have, let's say that I was deaf and I couldn't hear, and I'm talking, and I feel like I'm making a sound, I can feel my vocal cords moving, but is that enough proof that I'm making a sound? Just because my vocal cords are vibrating, does that mean that sound is actually coming out? And I think that's like the root of the issue here, is that we wouldn't know for sure. It wouldn't be able to be proven. Interesting. Okay, back to the text. It says, I, by time yet exists, all in all, an eternal one existence. Know ye that even though in the time ye are separate, yet still are one in all times existent. So what he's saying is, no matter how far in the future that someone's reading this, which at this point it's like 6,000, maybe 10,000 years later is when we're reading this, what Thoth is saying is that we are one. Like I am one with Thoth because we exist in this same universe. So even though we are at different times, we are still one eternal existence. But so now this is making me think about like time travel. So are we saying that? But the thing is like how I was just saying earlier, that if we can think it, then it has to be true. And there are countless stories and movies, which are also just stories, about time travel. And there was this really crazy TikTok that came up the other day about, so this guy has like a ring light, and so when it detects movement, it records. So it recorded this young guy going into the shed, and so he freaked out and he called the cops, and they go into the shed. There's nobody in the shed. There's nobody at all. Then 2 days later, the ring light like alerts him again, and I just got goosebumps. And an older looking guy comes out of the shed, and he put them side by side of the young guy who went to the shed and the old guy that came out of the shed, and they look like the same person. So he's like, is my shed like a time portal? Like, what is going on here? And then he puts this on TikTok, so of course it blows up, and then people like did a reverse Google search of this man's face, and they found him, and that he was obsessed with time travel, and he died mysteriously. But it was like weird because they said that like they wrote it in 2017 that he died in 2018. Like the times were off. Like how could you know that he was gonna die a year later? But then yet here we are in 2024 watching this guy go into the shed and come out looking like 50 years older. So like the whole thing was like really weird. And that was like a real true life thing. Like this guy was actually concerned. Like he actually called the cops. Like it wasn't like this story. So when you have evidence like that in real life, and with all of the stories that we know, my favorite movie since I was like 8 has been Back to the Future. So I've always been interested in time travel, and I guess I just still haven't wrapped my head around it to fully believe it. But then there are also stories of people like doing meditations where they go back in time and comfort their younger self. But then like family members will say, "Oh yeah, I remember when you would talk about this strange woman coming to see you as a kid." And then turns out it was just herself. So it's like there's like these weird things that have happened in real life. So it's like, how does that necessarily work? Back to it, it says, "Ceased then the voice of the dweller, and departed I to ponder on time. For I knew that in these words lay wisdom, and a way to explore the mysteries of time. Oft did I ponder the words of the dweller, then saw I to solve the mysteries of time. Found I that time moves through strange angles, yet only by curves could I hope to attain the key that would give me the access to the time-space. Found I that only by moving upward, and yet again by moving rightward, could I be free from the time of the movement." So what I think he's talking about here is like that Jeremy Bearimy that I was saying earlier from The Good Place. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch The Good Place. It's a show. I think it's like on Hulu or Netflix or something. But anyway, what he's saying is that he had to like escape this Jeremy Bearimy. And again, the reason why they called it a Jeremy Bearimy is because that's how time loops. So that's what Thoth is saying here too. That only by the curves that time moved in these strange angles, and in the curves, that's why he could find the key of time, which is what this tablet is titled. So again, talking about like Soul with Jerry, how he was also moving through these strange angles in order to get Joe, I believe his name was. So it's going like along those lines is what I'm thinking. Then he says, "Forth I came from out of my body, moved in the movements that changed me in time." So I guess this is now talking about like astral projection, coming out of the body, moved in the movements that changed me in time. So now he's allowing time to change him. Maybe like he's being moved by the movements that changed me in time. Maybe. At the top of page 62, it says, "Strange were the sights I saw in my journeys, many the mysteries that opened to view. Saw I man's beginning, learn from the past that nothing is new. Seek ye, O man, to learn the pathway that leads through the spaces that are formed forth in time. Forget not, O man, with all thy seeking, that light is the goal ye shall seek to attain. Search ye for the light on thy pathway, and ever for thee the goal shall endure. Let not thy heart turn ever to darkness. Light let shine soul be, a sun on the way. Know ye that eternal brightness, Yah shall ever find thy soul hid in light. Never fettered by bondage or darkness, ever it shines forth a sun of the light. I know, though hidden in darkness, your soul, a spark of the true flame, exists. Be ye one with the greatest of all lights. Find at the source the end of thy goal." And source is fully capitalized, and so is end. So it's saying like to keep going towards the light, and then you're going to find your end by becoming one with God again. I just wanted to say really quick, going back up to the top of the page, when he was saying, here we go. When he was saying, "Forth I came from out of my body, moved by the movements that changed me in time." And I said, I don't really know what that meant. Well, I think that it means that he came out of his body to like see his growth as his human body. So moved in the movements that changed me in time. It kind of reminds me of like ocean movements. Like you get moved by the movements of the waves of the ocean. And here he's saying he's being moved by the movements of time and how time has changed him. So from birth to whatever age he is now, that he has grown, his body has changed, and I think that's what he's talking about there. Then just going over, because I kind of read a big chunk here, so saying that nothing from the past, like he went to the beginning of man, he learned that nothing is new, everything kind of just repeats itself. So again, going back to that Jeremy Bearimy from The Good Place. Then he goes into the light stuff, which he's been talking about this for a couple of tablets now, like just keep going into the light. But what I don't understand is why somebody wouldn't want to go into the light. And when I asked that, a thought popped into my head that said that it's scary. It's scary to go to the light at the end of the tunnel. It's people, it's kind of like why people don't change, because they'd rather be in this state of survival or this state of chaos because that's what they're comfortable with, because that's all they've known. So being in the light, in the goodness, is sometimes scary for people. So that's what he was talking about there. Then he just keeps saying to go into the light, and then when you keep going, you'll find source, and at the end of thy goal. Then he says, light is life, for without the great light nothing can ever exist. Know ye that in all formed matter the heart of light always exists. Even though bound in darkness, inherent light always exists. So I think this is what he was talking about with that eternal thought of God, that the light will always exist because God's thought is eternal. That as long as God keeps imagining us or keeps thinking about us, and that's what I was saying earlier, that once you start, you can't really stop it. So just the pure incident of thinking it is like a chain event that it can never be stopped. Then he says, once I stood in the halls of Amenti and heard the voice of the lords of Amenti, saying in tones that rang through the silence, words of power mighty and potent. Chanted they the songs of the cycles, and words that open the path to beyond. I saw the great path opened, and looked for the instant into the beyond. Saw I the movements of the cycles, vast as the thought of the source could convey. So that's interesting. So he's talking about seeing like the cycles. So this could be, he's talked about in other tablets where the cycles could be like a cycle of time or like a cycle of a life, which is also represented in time. But it's just that these cycles that just keep repeating themselves. So it's kind of like the lessons that we're meant to learn. They keep repeating and they keep showing up in our lives until we finally make a change to do something different. And these cycles, like we say that it's bad that these things keep popping up in our lives when we just want it to be done and over with, but they're going to keep popping up until we change, until we say that we don't want this anymore, because the universe is just trying to give us what we think we are. So this last part where it's saying, saw I the movements of the cycles, vast as the thought of the source could convey. So source is fully capitalized, so it's saying God. So God's thought. So he was seeing all of the cycles that make up God's being, like God's mind. That's interesting. So he got to peer into God's mind. That's pretty cool. Knew I then, even infinity is moving on to some unthinkable end. Saw I that the cosmos is order, and part of the movement that extends to all space, a party of an order of orders, constantly moving in harmony of space. So now what this is seeming like is like he got to go behind the veil of a clock. So we only see the two hands that are moving, we see the numbers, we see the face of the clock, and what he's saying is that these cycles are like the cogs and the wheels of the clock. So he got to see like the behind the scenes. And then that's how he saw that everything really is just moving in order. It's moving exactly the way that it needs to. It's the order of orders. It's the harmony of space. Oh my gosh, look at this next line. It says, saw I the wheeling of cycles. So the fact that he uses the term wheeling, so it's very reminiscent of a clock. Oh, next line. Okay, I have to keep going. Saw I the wheeling of cycles like vast circles across the sky. Knew I then that all that has being is growing to meet yet another being in a far-off grouping of space and of time. Sheesh, that's wild. Okay, this is incredible. Let me tell you about it. So what he's saying here is that there are other gods. And like I was saying earlier, that God is growing. And so other gods are growing. And so then they're going to meet and combine. And that's just so wild to think about. So I shared this meme on my Instagram. I'm trying to think which one now. It was either Grounded Spirits or Ela Institute, but it was Ela Institute. It was Ela Institute because I was talking about trees in that one. So anyway, it's about this tree that's asking another tree, like, hey, can I hold your hand, like with the root, right? And she's like, yeah, but we're gonna have to grow some. And he's like, okay, no worries, and so then they grow, and as they grow their roots, they eventually touch. And I thought it was the absolute cutest thing. And then I saw it in real life, like here on the side of the street. There were these two trees who's like it was like just the tips, just the little tips were touching with the little leaves. They were trees from across the street that grew, and then now their leaves were able to tickle each other. So I thought that was so cute that these two beings that should have never met found each other. And then I feel like it kind of relates to us as humans, like finding our soulmate. Like, we each have to grow on our own in order to be ready to accept the love of our soulmate, because if they come too soon, then we'll just think they're like everybody else and we'll just discard them. But that's why people always talk about like the right timing. And then again with time, right? This episode is called, or this tablet is called, The Key of Time. So it all really comes down to the timing of it all. And the way that he says it here too, that knew I then that all has being that all that has being is growing to meet yet another being in a far off grouping of time, of space, and of time. And so this means for anything. This means so all that has being is growing to meet yet another being. This is us as humans. We are a being that is growing to meet yet another being in a far off grouping of space and time. The same thing goes like for actual God, for like the trees that I was just talking about, for everything. And so it's all just part of the law that we're going to keep growing until somebody matches our energy, and then we'll become one. And talking about trees, there was such a cool thing. This one I posted on my personal. If you want to follow me on my personal, it's Laura Lynn, so ITSLAURAALYN. And there I posted they're two separate tree trunks, and then they they pan up, and as they're panning, the two trees literally become one. Like there is one trunk. It's indistinguishable that it came from two separate trees. And I think that's also what the point of life is to be able to become one with another being, because then that's how we learn about ourselves, and that's how we grow as a self, as a soul. Then he says, knew I then that in words are power, to open the plains that are hidden from man. I, that even in words lies hidden the key that will open above and below. So it's like the whole like open sesame or like the abracadabra. I forget exactly like how, like what abracadabra stands for, but somebody like broke it down and it's something like what I desire is what is reality, or like something like along those lines, like my words are powerful. I forgot. But something along those lines. Just look it up. You just put abracadabra into Google and put like spiritual meaning, it'll pop up. But yeah, and that's what they call it, like spelling, because when you're spelling something, it's also like these words hold this energy. Words are just holders of energy, and so the way that we use our words is how this energy gets transmuted into doing what we want it to be, and that's why words are so powerful and manifestations are so powerful. Then Thoth says, hark ye now, man, this word I leave with thee. Use it, and ye shall find power in its sound. Say ye the word, Zin Uru, and power ye shall find. Yet must ye understand that man is of light, and light is of man. And light is capitalized, so talking about God. That we are of God, and God is of us. It sounds like a quick little smile, because that's what I say in Monterey. So that's cool too. Me and Thoth 2,000 or 10,000 years in between, but we have the same message, so that's kind of cool. List ye, O man, and hear a mystery, stranger than all that lies neath the sun. Know ye, O man, that all space is filled by worlds within worlds. I, one within the other, is one within the other, yet separate by law. So this is what I was talking about with Monterey, how I am now saying that it's, well, I already knew this, but in Monterey, I'm talking about my own body, or like Reina's body, and then it was supposed to like be a parallel for what's going on with actual God, and that's what he's saying here. Basically talking about like the macrocosm and the microcosm, that it all just kind of goes in forever. So like there's a universe within me, and then within that universe there's a being who has a universe within it, and then it just kind of goes on forever. And the same thing goes on the other side. So we're within God, but God is within God's own God, and God's God is within another God, and that's what Thoth is talking about here, that we're all just within each other. They're just fractals. If you have yet to see the documentary Inner Worlds and Outer Worlds, I believe it's on Prime, might be on Hulu. Anyway, this documentary does a really good job of explaining that. And once again, here we see it with Thoth. I'm going to read this part one more time. It says, list ye, O man, and hear a mystery, stranger than all that lies neath the sun. Know ye, O man, that all space is filled by worlds within worlds. I, one within the other, yet separate by law. And actually, Holy Ray tells me about this, that I can go down a level, but I can't go up a level. So that's why I say I, but I meant Reina. It's just that the book is told in the first person, so that's why I keep saying I. So yeah, Reina can talk to the angels within her universe, but she wouldn't be able to go and talk to the angels of the universe that she's a part of, like with God. Well, I mean, she could talk to them, but not go to like actual heaven, being alive. It gets a little tricky, but you know what I'm trying to say. Then it says, once in my search for deep buried wisdom, I opened the door that bars them from man. So them is fully capitalized. So I'm not necessarily sure who them is, but I guess we're going to find out. So I'm going to read it one more time. It says, once in my search for deep buried wisdom, I opened the door that bars them from man. Called I from the other planes of being, one who was fairer than the daughters of men. I called her from out of the spaces to shine as a light in the world of men. Used I the drum of the serpent. It looks like serpent, but it's actually serpent. I don't know if that's a typo or if it's actually a serpent. Wore I the robe of the purple and gold. Placed on my head I the crown of silver. Around me the circle of cinnabar shone. Raised I my arms and cried the invocation that opens the path to the plains beyond. So he's doing this ritual. Cried to the lords of the signs in their houses, lords of the two horizons, watchers of the treble gates, stand ye one at the right and one at the left, as the star rises to his throne. Star is fully capitalized, as is lords and signs, and rules over his sign. I, thou dark prince of Arulu, open the gates of the dim hidden land, and release her whom ye keep imprisoned. So he's doing this ritual to release this woman to help bring like the light. But it's interesting the way that he said it, like the signs in their houses. It made me think of astrology. And then you have your two horizons. So you have your ascendant and descendant. Watchers of the treble gates. Kind of lost me there. But it means something. I think it's still related to astrology. And then it says, stand ye one at the right, one on the left. And that reminds me of like Jesus, like the God and Jesus, like he sits at the throne of God as a star rises to his throne. And like I said, star is fully capitalized. So I don't necessarily know, like, does it mean star like an actual star, like scientifically, star as in a king, star as in like your sun sign, if we're talking about astrology, because then the next line is, and rules over his sign. So maybe the star is like the Greek god or goddess of whatever the sign is. Interesting, I don't know. And then he talks about the dark prince of Arulu, and he's asking to release her. We don't know who her is yet. That he keeps imprisoned. So then he says, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, dark lords and shining ones, and by their secret names which I know and can pronounce, hear ye and obey my will. Lit I then twith flame my circle, and called her. Her is fully capitalized. In the space plains beyond, dot of light return from Arulu. So dot, it's spelled like daughter minus the ER. And he's known like for often, he says oft. For listen, he says list. So he might be saying daughter of light. 7 times and 7 times have I passed through the fire. Food have I not eaten, water have I not drunk. I call thee from Arulu, from the realms of Eker Shagal. I summon thee, Lady of Light. Then before me rose the dark figures, the figures of the Lord's Arulu. Parted they before me, and forth came the Lady of Light. Free was she now from the lords of the night, free to live in the light of the earth sun, free to live as a child of the light. Hear ye and listen, O my children. Magic is knowledge, and only is law. Be not afraid of the power within thee, for it follows law as the stars in the sky. So he's saying, don't be scared of being empowered, because you're doing what you're meant to do. Like, you're not going to, as long as you're doing it for good, and as long as you're like just going into the light and have the best intentions, that no harm will come to you. That whatever comes to you is meant for you, and it'll follow the law, just like the stars in the sky, he says. Know ye that to be without knowledge, wisdom is magic, and not of the law. Interesting. So if you don't have the knowledge, then whatever that you hear is just magic, and it's not. So magic in like a negative way, not magic like in a positive, like God-given kind of way. So it's not of the law. So we always want to be with the law, which is just being in harmony, having that balance. I'm going to read that part again. Know ye that to be without knowledge, wisdom is magic, and not of the law. But know ye that ever ye by your knowledge can approach closer to a place in the sun. So again, always going towards the knowledge. That's how you're going to go towards the light, and that's how you're going to have the sun. List ye, my children, follow my teaching. Be ye ever seeker of light. Shine in the world of men all around thee, a light on the path that shall shine among men. Follow ye and learn of my magic. Know that all force is thine if thou wilt. Fear not the path that leads to knowledge, but rather shun ye the dark road. Light is thine, O man, for the taking. Cast off the fetters, and thou shalt be free. Know ye that thy soul is living in bondage, fettered by fears that hold ye in thrall. Open thy eyes and see the great sunlight. Be not afraid, for all is thine own. Fear is the Lord of the dark Arulu, to he who never faced the dark fear. I know that fear has existence, created by those who are bound by their fears. Shake off thy bondage, O children, and walk in the light of the glorious day. Never turn thy thoughts to the darkness, and surely ye shall be one with the light. Man is only what he believeth, a brother of darkness or a child of light. Come thou into the light, my children. Walk in the pathway that lead to the sun. Hark ye now, and list to the wisdom. Use thou the word I have given unto thee. Use it, and surely thou shalt find power and wisdom, and light to walk in the way. Seek thee, and find the key I have given, and ever shalt thou be a child of the light. And that's how it ends. So what he's talking about in these last bits, it was really hard to read because like the grammar is off. But what he's trying to say here is that the only thing that is holding you back is fear. That's the only thing, like, that there are no limitations, there is no cage of anything. So in my book, Freedom, Love, and Knowledge, I'm talking about how Gabrielle Souchon and Taylor Swift, how they feel caged in their bodies at an individual level. They feel caged in relationships at the interpersonal level, and they feel caged by society within their careers and by being a woman in society and just the way that they're treated in society. But what Thoth is telling us, and they actually figure it out themselves too, that as long as you have a strong inner world and your soul is free, then no other limitation can exist. That it all just comes down to who you are, and the only thing that's really holding you back is fear. So that's why Thoth keeps repeating, like, fear not, like, stop fearing, like, it's whatever you believe is real. So if you believe you're a child of the darkness, you are. If you believe you're a child of the light, you are. So why not go into the light? That's why he keeps saying it over and over and over again, now ad nauseum. But yeah, we just have to keep going into the light, and everything will work out. Everything will be great. So yeah, now we know the key of time. Thanks to Thoth, we understand time a little bit better as well. So if you learned something today, please give this podcast a 5-star review. And if you have any of your own theories on time, I would love to hear it. Please send me a DM at Grounded Spirits, or send me an email at groundedspirits@gmail.com. I will see you in the next episode, where we're going to be talking about the key to above and below, which is so exciting because that's the only thing that most people know about the Emerald Tablets, as above, so below. And so now we're going to actually learn what is meant by this saying and the key to above and below. I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.